Good morning. This is Pastor Scott Anquay, your instructor for the African American Church and Social Justice course number 8035. This is session 3 of Digiversity. Again, thank you to the president of the convention, National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated, Dr. Jerry Young. Again, thank you to our Congress President, Dr. Elliott Cuff, and our technology coordinator, Dr. Alvin Love, for inviting me to instruct this course at this time. If you have been following us for the first 2 sessions, you should have already read chapters 1 and 2. And then also you should have viewed the documentary, I Am Not Your Negro, as well as 13th, directed by Ava DuVernay. If you have done both of those, then you are already enriched and entrenched in the subject matter of social justice. Our previous slides have covered the need for social justice, the difference between charity and social justice. We've also dove into poverty, one of the main issues that we understand that is causing the disparities. We realize that there are multiple subject matters that a church can actually take on when it comes to dealing with social justice. And so we want to continue the conversation, and hopefully this conversation will lead you to a point where you go to your pastor. If you're a pastor, you yourself will think about either strengthening your social justice ministries, or you yourself may create a social justice ministry around a cause that concerns you. And so I'm going to share my screen at this time. And again, the course is the African American Church and Social Justice, course number 8035. And I, again, am Pastor Scott Anquay, the very proud pastor of the St. Luke Missionary Baptist Church of Chicago. And so quickly, we'll zoom through a few of these slides to get us where we need to be today. Again, your course book, if you're just picking up the course books to serve this present age, Social Justice Ministries in the Black Church, Daniel L. Ayers and Reginald W. Williams, Jr. are your authors. Okay, and so there's other reading materials. I told you that you should read The New Jim Crow by attorney Michelle Alexander. That's a great book to give you an understanding about the school, the prison pipeline, and how mass incarceration is very profitable to our country. Words that we know are very prevalent. Again, prejudice, social oppression, privilege, social justice. These words are jumping off not only this screen here, but also we hear them quite a bit in our media. And so, again, we want to look at the first purpose of this class, to be faithful to the call of Christ, call of God in Christ on the church. And remember, if we're going to be the Church of Jesus Christ, then it only makes sense that God's people emulate the mission and ministry of Christ. We already should have sent me your introductions, which is great. Just want to review one more time the definition of social justice. You can formulate your own after you have read and taken this course, but remember, social justice is the fair and just relation between the individual and society. This is measured by the explicit term for distribution of wealth, opportunity for personal activity, and social privileges. The concept of social justice is often referred to the process of ensuring that individuals fulfill their societal roles and receive what was their due from society. Social justice should have an emphasis of breaking the barriers for social mobility, the creation of safety nets, and economic justice. Please keep in mind, interpretations that relate justice to a reciprocal relationship to society are mediated by differences in cultural traditions, some of which emphasize the individual responsibilities towards society, in others, the equilibrium between the access to power and its responsible use. So it's a cultural thing also. And so we went through some of the issues that, let me go back real quick. Some of the issues that we put out there, what are issues we're facing today. Black Lives Matter. We still see continued protests in our cities, poverty, over-policing, community hopelessness. COVID-19 is still looming. And so we have a lot to be concerned about. And so I'm going to zoom through these slides today so we can get to our course for today. Again, again, go back to charity, benevolent goodwill towards or love of humanity, compared to justice, which is the maintenance or administration of what is just, especially by impartial adjustment of conflicting claims. So keep that in mind. We've been doing charity in the church for a while, but we have not transcended largely into justice. So justice is where we're heading. Dr. King says we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. And so we talked about the biblical foundations for social justice. Again, Micah 6:8, what does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God? In the King James Version, it'll say to do justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. But that translation is very fitting, so we have a great understanding of what actually justly is to do justice, and what mercy is to do kindness or love kindness, embrace kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. And so we talked about traditional Christianity has taught for so long that what takes place on Sunday morning and what happens Monday through Saturday was separate, but we know that this has been dispelled by our overreaching effects of what happens Monday through Saturday on Sunday. And again, with the displacement of the church being closed because of COVID, the disparities in our communities because of the health risks, we are at more risk than any other community, even coming back into the church in large numbers because of our health disparities, high hypertension, high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, these things that affect us greater than other communities, puts us at a higher risk of not only contracting the virus, but also surviving the virus. And so we want to understand that also murders and things, mental health, stress, anxiety, all of this is impacting us and is impacting even our worship on Sunday. And so other prophets talked about the need of justice. Again, you can look at those, they're in your syllabus. I would encourage you to read these books by these prophets so that you can get to understand how God is a God of justice, and he really encourages us to be just people. And so social justice in the African American church, what does it look like? We know that the Black church has endured by rendering both social service and social justice. It has survived physically, mentally, and spiritually because of prophetic ministers and laypersons. Backed by the church, many stood in opposition to hostile governments, rejected unjust policies, and we lived out the Micah's decree to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly before our Almighty against great odds. You know, many movements fighting against Jim Crow, fighting against segregation, fighting for civil rights, fighting for voters' rights, fighting for equal rights. All of these fights were rooted in justice, rooted in mercy, and rooted in recognizing that we're supposed to walk humbly before our God. And so as we continue to move forward as the church, we want to get to a point where justice is second nature in the church. It's not enough for us to be a Sunday morning church, but we have to be a 7-day-of-the-week church so that we can continue to make impact on our society. And so we talked about some historical figures that went along before us, that came along before us. You can do your own research. There's so many more names, so many. Again, just in the last month, we had a very Reverend Vivian. We had John Lewis. These are great figures that have really laid the way for us, you know what I mean, to continue on and march on and recognize how important these social justices. Matter of fact, as I'm doing this recording, we're celebrating the selection of an a Black woman as a vice president nominee for the Democratic Party. Again, that's a first. Two other women have been named to be vice president running mates, but this is the first Black woman, a woman of color, that looks like many of our sisters today. And so, you know, we do this so that we can pave the way. But if it was not for Shirley Chisholm, I don't think a Kamala Harris could have come. So we have to keep that in mind. So moving forward, when we get to the point of, again, what are the issues? Poverty, joblessness, environmental justice, water justice, food scarcity, pollution, mass incarceration, bail reform, healthcare reform, COVID-19, again, Black Lives Matter, protests, police shooting, inner city violence. I'm in Chicago. We hear about violence every single day. It's largely segregated to areas that have a lot of gang proliferation. But still, it worries us because we know that our streets are unsafe because people are being shot down. Police shootings, right now, protests are going on downtown because of over-policing. And this has been ongoing since the George Floyd death. So we continue to hear about protests every day. And so it's just a lot going on. So it's not for the church to pick up every one of these issues because then you become overwhelmed. But as you pick up an issue, I think you need to be passionate about the issue. And we'll talk about that at the end of the course, about how you select the issue that's most affecting you or that you feel most connected to. And so we talked about poverty rates. Again, the poverty rates in the country, when we look at Blacks being 24.1% and a poverty rate compared to whites at 9.1%, that is a great disparity. This is, poverty really is the issue when it comes to social justice. How do we treat the poor in our country? We are at a point now that the wealth gap between Blacks and whites is so enormous that it's really unspeakable. You know what I mean? And dime on every one of their dollars. It's just crazy on white wealth compared to Black wealth. But we've been systematically cut out of neighborhoods due to redlining. Our property values have been depressed because of how they describe our neighborhoods. We have not gotten loans from banks where other communities were able to get loans. When we do get loans, we have to go through mortgage companies that charges us exorbitant mortgage rates, which causes us to foreclosure more easily. There's a lot to deal with. And so that's why the church cannot ignore what's going on. Again, poverty rates in Illinois similar to around the country. Blacks are 23%, where whites are 7%. So we still lag behind greatly in the state of Illinois. And so the poor, those who Jesus called the least of these, are not properly cared for today. And so we want to continue to look at how do we deal with poverty. One of my heroes in the fight right now, William Barber, he continues to push the Poor People's Campaign. And because we have to continue to talk about poverty and how poverty really is affecting everything that's going on. Depressed wages, inability to take care of your family, street income from drugs, which causes turf wars, which causes murder, which causes all kinds of other society ills. It's all, rooted back to, not enough resources. And then when we look at our community, the miseducation of our people because of lack of resources, our family structure is torn down because of lack of resources. There's a whole lot that I can talk about. You read the book, the author gives you inkling, but you yourself, because you took this course, I got a feeling you have a concern, you have a connection. And so if I was you, I would grab as much reading material as possible so you can continue to stay up to date on what's going on in our society. And so we talk about the prison problem. We talk about how many people are in prison. Blacks are in prison largely more than whites. This is a part of the tearing down of the family. So these slides here just gives you an idea of how the prison system, and more people are in prison today, even though crime has gone down. So, but that was a system put in place to make sure that blacks were locked up disproportionately to any other group. And I'm sure that you saw that in the 13th documentary, and so it opened your eyes. And so prayerfully you really got a chance to see that documentary, and it helps you with understanding how these systems are in place to continue to oppress Black people. And so another one of if you have time, this is not necessary, but if you do have time, I would recommend that you do one more documentary, which is the Kalief Browder story about a young man in New York that got caught up in the system, accused of stealing a book bag, but unfortunately did not get the proper representation, spent more than 2 years in Rikers Island, changed his life forever. Even after they ended up dropping the charges and he was set free, his mental state could not handle it. And unfortunately, this young man ended up taking his life. It's a very powerful documentary. Jay-Z actually produced it. The rapper Jay-Z produced the documentary, but it's something to look at. It's something to really consider. Okay, so ministries of justice. So let's really get down to the nut and bolt. We're at part 3, and this is where we really want to get down to how do we develop a ministry of justice? How do we handle social justice in the church? We just can't just talk about it. We have to really think about how do we get down to it. And so one of the things that we understand, and it's clear, is discovering the power of partnerships. So ministries of justice within the church should be internally based and externally relevant. That is to say that whatever ministry you choose is going to be birthed out of the church, but and is internally based. So the people in the church is based in the church, but it has to be externally relevant. There's no need that you having a ministry that's not going to actually benefit the community where the church resides. Right now, there's a lot of COVID feeding. The churches are doing a lot of COVID feeding. That's a social service ministry, other than social justice, social service ministry. But it's internally based, but externally relevant, because we want to make sure that there's families that can really benefit from the need for food. And so please keep that in mind as you start thinking about the ministries that you want to have at your church. Make sure they're externally relevant. Also, keep in mind the time for talk has definitely passed us. If you have been following the Sunday school curriculum, we're in the book of James, and he tells us again, over and over again, how our walk must line up with our talk. So we can no longer just talk about it. There is no substitute for action. So we want to get into action. And this is what this course is all about. We're going to get you into action. And so the church must be willing to collaborate with other ministries and organizations to further the cause of justice. One thing I would definitely recommend, strongly recommend, please do not try to recreate the wheel. Even if you are talented, even if you have great resources, connect to another organization. This word collaborate, come alongside and work together with other ministries and organizations to further the cause of justice. There are many organizations that are actually doing justice work that your church can connect to the Urban League, NAACP in Chicago, Operation Push, are just some of the bigger names. But there are other organizations that actually are doing great justice work. At my church, we collaborated with the University of Illinois hospitals, their clinic system, and to do COVID feeding. And we actually collaborated with them, the Miles Square Clinic, my church. We were able to prepare 2,000 bags of food and get it to families at the onset of the COVID. We did that with volunteers from their organization, plus volunteers from our church, as we were able to address this great need of what's going on in social needs. So remember, we didn't have to, and listen, the great thing is it didn't cost our church little or nothing but time, because we were able to connect with the right organizations that were willing to partner with us. So look for partnerships, collaboration as you move towards social justice. There's a way of doing that by doing there's a case study in the book, and the case study looks at the HIV and AIDS, and how here's the study, the HIV/AIDS Ministry of Justice were created and implemented around that are present in church itself or in the community. So it was around needs that are present in the church in the South or in the community. And so here, this case study, and when you read it, you'll see that at this time that the book was written, AIDS was a major problem, which is still a major problem in our community, believe it or not, because still in our community, young people are being affected by HIV and AIDS. But this ministry looked at what was needed and then found out how to move forward. And so when we look at the ministry, you'll see that they collaborated in order to bring about effect and to do social justice. Now notice here, in the book, you'll see the author broke down these things. Care of the soul. Care of the soul is part like charity. When we read earlier on what charity looks like, well, care of the soul for a person with AIDS or HIV means treating that person as a person and not as a problem. That may mean establishing support groups for people with HIV or AIDS, so that they might support one another, incorporating those lives with HIV and AIDS into the active life of the congregation through programming and personal contact. Now, I want to show you something. Once you decide that you want to get into social justice, because Care of the Soul really deals with social service or making a person feel comfortable, showing love, charity. But once we get into moving into social justice, first thing that comes up is going to be the word education. These three other bullet points let you know that you're moving into the area of social justice. So education of the congregation and community. First of all, if you're going to have a social justice ministry, you must learn to educate the congregation and the community on what your social justice reasons are. What's the need? So education about HIV and AIDS must include distinguishing between facts and falsehoods, both about the disease and about its contagions. So here we are, first educating the community or the church on why it's necessary to even have a social justice ministry around this particular cause as far as health disparity around HIV and AIDS. And then we want to move from education to political action and awareness. Education should lead to awareness and action. The time is far past for the church only to speak about what is wrong and do nothing about it. And then the author said, from that, you start looking for collaboration. And so you look at justice ministries must be willing to go outside the walls of the church to collaborate. Even in the city of Chicago, if I wanted to move an HIV and AIDS ministry, there are organizations that can come in and do the education, provide things that would help those with HIV and AIDS, literature and things like that, lead them to services that will benefit from them. Again, the collaboration, we can call a couple organizations right here in Chicago, like Howard Brown clinics would be one to come top of mind that can come in and do the education. But there, you can connect to different hospitals around your church and find out what they have as far as a ministry that ties to this particular cause. But it doesn't have to end there or start there. You know, you may not need to deal with HIV because remember, it has to be internally based and externally relevant. If you don't have any constituents or congregants or people in your community that can benefit from this information, then that's not an area you want to go into. Maybe you just want to go into general health care. What is your issue? What are the issues today? Again, when we look at housing, maybe you got a housing problem, not necessarily just homelessness, but housing. You know, is housing affordable in your community? Do you want a ministry around housing? So again, charity, helping people find housing, teaching people about credit, teaching people about the benefits of owning as opposed to renting. But then we move into justice. We have to educate people around why housing issues are important. What's going on in our community? Has there been redlining? Has there been predatory lending? Has there been bad landlords? So we look at the justice and we start fighting predatory lenders, fighting redlining in our neighborhoods. And then we move to collaborate. Are there any organizations that help with housing? There's many organizations that not only do the social service part by giving vouchers to people that are in need to help pay their rent, but we can connect people now. We know that the CARES Act had passed. There's money in the CARES Act on state as well as local levels that will give grants. I love that word grants because grants mean you don't have to pay them back. Grants to individuals that need help in finding apartments or staying in their current apartments. And so that grant money is available because of the CARES Act. And if the HEROES Act will ever get passed, that's only going to expand those available funds. Same thing about a prison ministry. A prison ministry is not just going to visit people who are in prison. A prison ministry is not just going to send care packages of those that are in prison. A prison ministry may talk about over-policing, mass incarceration, bail reform, educating people on why so many Blacks are in prison, connecting to organizations that are doing the work on the ground that may be leading causes to help reduce prison population. And your church can get involved in that. Again, you have unlimited resources when you come to people, because people is your main resource. Okay, also, we can do a health ministry, again, providing resources for affordable or free health care, educating people with regard to various illnesses and maladies, educating people in ways to be well through eating, exercise. That's charity. But then justice, we know that COVID has revealed the ugly truth that we already knew, that there are health disparities in our communities. We are not as healthy as other individuals. Why? Because we don't have the same access to affordable health care. And then this past administration has done all it can to dismantle the Affordable Care Act, which was providing health care to those who could buy in that have pre-existing illnesses. So we have to fight for justice. When we do that, look, we connect and we collaborate with other organizations that are fighting for the same thing. This author does a great job in showing us how we can do that in our ministries that we choose. So continuing, remember, the crux of social justice work is confronting institutions that systematically create inequity and produce needs, coming together across lines of race, religion, and ethnicity, making justice issues matters of human rights and not the exclusive problem of one marginalized minority. I often tell people I'm not going to apologize on behalf of my people for the injustice that you have done to them. We're going to look at how you have done these injustices that have affected a large number of people. I'm not going to apologize when you do environmental justice and bring polluting factories into our communities and cause great levels of asthma and breathing problems or cancers in my community. What I'm going to do is say, you need to correct those ills. So remember the crux, the main source, the reason why we do social justice is working in confronting institutions that systematically create inequity and produce needs. That's where injustice comes. There is a reality that we are dealing in a society that has benefited from systematic racism. There is no secret that the injustice that we are experiencing is because of racism in our communities. If we don't tackle racism, if we don't tackle the things that are affecting our community, we're going to continue to allow these folks to benefit from us, benefit from working on our backs, and so we have to deal with the problem that's in front. So keep that in mind. So next slide we're doing. We do Faithful Citizens workshops here around this cause. We do Faithful Citizens workshops around this cause, and so we have to continue to do the Faithful Citizens workshops that are necessary to make sure that we educate people around what the issues are. What are the issues? We have, right now we are at the point of one of the most pivotal elections in our history. If we don't vote now, when will we vote? And so we have to look at how do we get involved? So we got to get down to the nuts and bolts of this thing. What are the nuts and bolts? The nuts and bolts are laying the foundation. Excuse me. Remember that when we're laying the foundation, we have to recognize how do we tackle these major issues that we're dealing with in our communities? Well, when developing social justice ministry, it is equally important to build an infrastructure that will withstand challenges and changes in leadership, social, economic, demographics, and political realities over time. The author uses this statement, but this statement is so powerful. Remember, it can never be about one individual. It can never be about one leader when we're developing a social justice ministry. Even though it may be their idea, it still must withstand the challenges and changes in leadership. For instance, if I start a social justice ministry about a cause that I'm passionate with, I still must bring people along, train them up, prepare them to carry on the challenge, carry on the mission, carry on the goals, and make sure things continue to happen just in case I fall off the scene. And, for whatever reason, change in leadership, change in social economic demographics, when you do grants and things, sometimes grants are plentiful, and then sometimes because of social economic situations, they're less available. Same thing with giving in the church. In 2008, we had a great recession, and many churches suffered because many people lost their jobs and were unable to continue to pay tithes, and churches suffered under that time, and many ministries folded because they weren't able to sustain the social economic changes that happened. The political realities right now, these last 3.5 years, we're in a different political reality. There's rolling back of EPA regulations. They're loosey-goosey, I say, on things. Again, those that have are getting more, and those that are without are getting less. These are the political realities that we're in. So we're fighting again against systems, and so we have to be able to make sure that whatever ministry we create can last, stand the test of time, stand the changes and the realities in things. So we have a saying, and this author had a great quote. While the church may not have mega church resources, it does have people committed to mega ministry. And again, I cannot stress enough how important people are. We're going to talk in a few minutes about what our capital is, what capital we have in the church. And one of the most important pieces of capital is actual people capital, human capital. And so keep that in mind. While the church may not have mega resources, may not have all the money, but you do have committed people to ministry. And so what social justice ministries will benefit your church? Well, we have to make sure that we have a social justice ministry that will really make an impact on the church or the community. Don't just pick something because it's the hot topic. Don't just pick something because you've seen somebody else do it. It has to be internally based and externally relevant. Internally based and externally relevant. So that you ask that question and you examine that question and then you birth your ministry. So education and activism do not require an abundance of resources. Building a social justice ministry within the church requires people committed to do the work of justice. You'll read this in chapters 3, how the commitment level is so important. If you get people committed to doing the work will get done, okay? So the first step in establishing a social justice ministry or justice ministry is determining whether it should be classified as a nonprofit organization. Many of our churches already are 501c3 organizations. If you can actually birth your social justice ministry under the umbrella of the church. Some churches have decided to do community development organizations. And so they have a separate organization that handles the ministry or the impact. And so we have to keep that in mind. So we have to make sure we decide on what we want to do as far as a social justice ministry. And then we have a sample of a mission. A sample of a mission for a church is a church down in Texas, Freddie Haynes' church, the Friendship West Baptist Church. And they have a strong social justice ministry there. And their social justice ministry has a strong social justice ministry statement. And so I included that statement so that not that you need to copy this statement. You know, you can be unique in your own language. You can be unique in your own language. But it's important for you to develop a mission statement that's going to be really beneficial to making sure that you mobilize the right amount of people to do the work. So here's the sample of the mission statement from the Friendship West Baptist Church. In your book, you'll see a chart, organizational chart of their work. And it's important for you to understand that they have their own mission statement. The mission of the social action community is to strengthen the presence of people of color in the policy arena by combating destructive policy designs, unjust, unfair laws, policing regulatory guidelines, engaging in activism, direct action, and educating citizens on issues to promote human rights and democracy. So the impact areas that they want to, because they have a mission, and I want to make sure I share this with you, and I've shared this every time I teach this class. Your mission statement must be aligned with your church's mission statement. Read your church's mission statement and allow your church's mission statement to help you develop the mission statement of your social justice ministry. If your mission statement does not align with the mission statement of your social justice ministry, you're setting yourself up for failure. Remember, your mission statement most likely came from your pastor, the vision caster. So make sure that whatever mission statement you write lines up with the church's mission statement. Also in that mission statement, you want to have areas of impact which are essential to the church's ministry and the community at large. Here, their impact areas are economic empowerment, education, employment, legal and political action, environmental justice, and technology. These are the areas that they choose to want to impact, okay? You may impact other areas, but this is where the Friendship West Church has decided to impact. You may impact just one of those areas, 2 of those areas. You may do 6 of those areas, but whatever you choose to do, you want to be effective in your impact. Social justice community is committed to creating communities of opportunities by enlisting churches, community organizations, corporations, schools, city, state, national government, and citizens to build stronger neighborhood. Moreover, the social action community will give a voice to marginalized people, both nationally and internationally, through purpose-driven activism to ensure full human rights. Again, this is their strategy. This is well thought out. This took a lot of planning, a lot of work. The author shows you that as you read those chapters, how this ministry incorporated many of the people in their church, from the pastor's leadership to other leaderships, and then they broke it down in their organizational charts. All of it leads back up to the churches itself. And so, but they have a well laid out strategy on the work they plan on doing. The ministry is divided into 6 components. Volunteers currently provide leadership to each component. The following chart illustrates the components and reflects the major areas of focus. Again, I'm sharing this with you so you can see how expanding a social justice ministry can come about. So there are 6 areas: economic empowerment, employment, criminal justice, legal, technology, and political. Notice here in that, again, if you don't even have to have those 6, well, these are the 6 that they're focusing on. Then, part of establishing a successful, sustainable justice ministry is a clear purpose and statement of goals. So again, in their purpose of goals, the economic empowerment component, for example, has the following goals. This is straight from your book right here. Engage in and create opportunities for church and community to practice group economics. Educate and advocate for economic justice. Build up African-American owned businesses. Stimulate and increase economic activities in the southern sector. Engage community corporations through monitoring social responsibility program. Those are their goals. So from outside of the church, from outside of the physical walls of the church, many have explored doing the work of the church through various means. So ministries of justice are set up and organized from outside the church, but still do the work of the church based on the organization's sense of a call to the ministry of justice. Now, I use that because, again, remember what I just said, it must be tied to your church's mission statement. It must be tied to what the vision of your church is. What's the work that your church plans to do? Will your mission statement line up with the work that you have in mind? And so I'm going to stop there for today. Pursuing Things Hoped For is the next chapter, chapter number 4. I would encourage you to read chapter number 4, Pursuing Things Hoped For. You will get a blessing out of that, because we're going to talk about how we look at the walls that are torn down. And so the next session, we'll talk about chapter number 4, and we'll discuss that. So if you have any questions, please submit those questions to my email, pastorronque at AOL.com. Also, if you did not get the syllabus, please submit that request to pastorronque@aol.com. Hopefully, this time of engagement has been helpful to you. Again, review all the material. It's important that you read the book. Important that you read the book. You should be completing chapter 3. All of what I just discussed, you should have already read in the book. Read chapter 4 for our next session as we continue to move forward. And thank you again for your time. And I really appreciate you taking this class as we look at the African American church and social justice and how the African American church can make an impact on this subject of social justice. And again, God bless you and God keep you, and may heaven shine upon you. Thank you so much.